if you disagree, you're automatically a bigot, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
I think that's just unhealthy
I mean,
for ideas. Hmm.
it's only for certain ideas, of course. Nobody would
Right,
ever
right.
you disagree with Trump's "Make America Great Again" ideology. You're obviously a bigot. Nobody says that because it's only a tool that is used to silence criticism of certain ideologies, not all ideologies.
Yeah, yeah, I do agree. I'm curious, has anyone ever come up to you and said, I read your book, or I watched your video, or I listened to you speak here, and I'm no longer a Muslim, or I'm
Yeah.
atheist now, or an agnostic, or what's the most memorable kind of conversation you've had about that?
Well, there are many of them. I think one that springs to mind is
This episode is brought to you by our Revo Report Patreon. Join our community to get first access to interviews, Bible study guides, devotionals, and prayer books for adults, youth, families, and marriages. Plus, resources on Christian living, leadership, sermon prep, exclusive Q&As, online Bible studies, and even one-on-one coaching or counseling. Visit patreon.com/Vince Revo and grow in faith and truth with us.
a message I got from an Iranian who is now out of Iran. I won't say where he is. I don't want to cause him any trouble, but he said that when he was in Iran, he got hold of a poorly copied version of my book, The Truth About Muhammad. In other words, it wasn't the actual book. It was somebody had made copies and was distributing them in Iran. And I think that's great that they were doing that. And this guy saw it, and he was a believing Muslim, but he left Islam as a result. And so I was very grateful for that. But I get messages like that all the time. Just as a matter of fact, yesterday I got a message from a man in France who said that he had been a believing Muslim in a country in Africa. Once again, I won't name it. I don't want to cause him any trouble, but he came across things that I had written and videos, and he had embraced Christianity and left Islam. So once again, I'm very grateful to be able to be a help in that way. Islam can cause people so much harm in so many different ways. And so pretty much anything that they go to from it is a good thing for the world.
Mm-hmm. And, that must excite you when you get a message like that, or when you
Well,
get to
sure.
see that. Mm,
Well, this is very negative work, and most of the time I just get people telling me what a terrible person I am. And so
yeah, I can imagine.
argument.
Yeah, yeah. What surprises you most about Christians when they first learn about Islamic theology?
Oh, well, I can tell you lots of uh, crowds have said, sure, that's true, but
Mm,
it's not. Um,
mm,
like, or people say, we can't talk about this because we want to win souls among Muslims. We want to evangelize, and so we can't be antagonistic. And I think, yeah, but you have to be realistic. You have to you have to understand what you're dealing with. But yeah, there's a lot of resistance, and that's
mm,
um, across barriers among Christians. That is, evangelical Protestants will tend to say what I just said, that we want to win their souls, and so we don't want to offend them, and so we can't discuss these things. And Catholics will say the Pope says don't that Islam is peace, and so you must be wrong. And
wow.
Orthodox will say no, it's a religion of peace. It's just the Turks. And anyway, they all have their reasons to think that this is not anything they want to get into. And it does seem to cut against the grain nowadays when we are all reaching out and having interfaith dialogue, and we all love each other. And it seems to be that it's uniquely uncharitable. I remember years ago, I was at a Catholic conference, and the director of ecumenism, the interfaith outreach for some diocese somewhere, was walking toward me, and I thought, why does he have such a hostile look on his face? I knew who he was, but I didn't know this guy, and he was incredibly angry and hostile looking. And I realized as he swept by, didn't say a word. Oh, he must not like me because I do this, and he thinks that I'm hurting the chances for interfaith dialogue. And it's true. I think interfaith dialogue is a big sham that is a chance for Islamic groups to silence Christian voices about Muslim persecution of Christians in particular and other work. Anyway, that's the main obstacles. There are plenty. When it comes to Christian groups, there's another thing was, I debated the Catholic academic and theologian and philosopher Peter Kreeft. This was years ago, about 15 years ago. And he was saying that the Muslims are our big ally against secular atheism that is hostile to religions. And I think that you can watch that debate on YouTube as well. I thought it was an extraordinarily naive and ill-informed position, but it's a very...
Do you find that, Christians would rather kind of ally with Muslims in terms of where we agree, maybe in some more conservative topics or, issues?
Yeah, very much so. A lot of Christians of all types think these people will work with us on life issues, against abortion, against all the business, all the craziness about transgenderism and all that. And they will be our allies in general against secularism. And that's an uninformed position that comes from them assuming that because Muslims are believers and monotheists, believers in a religion, that they will be against abortion, which Islam is not actually, that they will be against transgenderism, which is Islam is not actually. In Iran, they actually force homosexuals to get transgender surgery in many cases so that they will no longer be homosexual technically.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, that's something the Islamic Republic does. And so this is not a reliable ally on life issues at all. And ultimately, they will not approach Christians as equals in some sort of a struggle against secular atheism. They will think of Christians as being people that the Quran wants them to conquer and subjugate and convert where possible. This is what the Quran teaches. They're not going to give it up to make common cause. And yet a lot of Christians, having no idea what the Quran teaches, assume that they will reach out despite their differences with us and work with us with mutual respect. And that may be true in the short term for a short-term goal, but it will never be true in the long term.
Historically, as a lot of people are looking at Europe right now, they're looking at the UK, they're looking at blasphemy laws. I think even in Canada, there are blasphemy laws. And, when you look at Turkey, for example, that we're studying Revelations, and the book of the letter of Revelation from John had circulated those churches. And those churches were in modern day Turkey. So you see the early church was very present there. And now, obviously, it's mainly an Islamic nation. Where Europe is, where the UK is. Is that historically? Is that how? Are you seeing it play out on how a nation becomes eventually a Islamic state? Do you think the UK one day will become an Islamic state at where it is right now? And where do you see Canada right now? Where do you see the US right now in that phase, if we could call it that?
Oh, they're all on the way, and they will all continue to be on the way until they decide not to be and start to resist, because they don't realize right now what's happening, and so they're not taking any steps to counter it. Now, in Turkey, there were several things that happened that haven't happened in the West, and so it's an imperfect analogy that impedes understanding.